Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals, and today it is Monday, and it's it feels like the beginning of fall, like today itself. The air is crisp, you can see a little bit of color change in the leaves of the trees, and all in all, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Will you be mine? Will you click on subscribe? Will you like the videos that are insightful to you? And I don't mean insightful like we're inciting anything. I mean insight. Inside. Do you see how spelling can work when you say a word? When every single sentence that I say is being analyzed by whoever's hearing this, and some are hearing it just out of phase. You know, I'm super happy. I want to bring you the beauty that's in the world, and I go out of my way to do that. And I'm finding it a little challenging to track down nature, and particularly the true fans of nature who might stand to benefit from getting out into nature to begin with. In other words, for myself, living in a world that is highly entertaining, I'll call it entertaining instead of stressful. Living in a world like this presents so many challenges that we can be paralyzed with anxiety. And by paralyzed, what I mean is that essentially we're going to end up being stymied, stopped in our tracks while we're trying to accomplish things. And here I am coming to the park where people are trying to accomplish things. They're trying to address their health. They want to make sure that they're getting in their steps, burning those calories. And what I like to say sometimes troubles people, because I suggest that also, in addition to all of that, we can be happy to begin with. We can choose to be happy. And when we're happy and we know it, clap your hands. So are you happy? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. See, the thing is that it's hard to decipher me. If you're listening to me trying to hear and understand what I'm talking about, it's hard to decipher me because the way that I talk isn't quite in that same resonating pitch, I should say, because I'm presenting to you some heavy subjects, but I'm absolutely happy, and I couldn't be more happy. My life is completely blessed. I have the opportunity to help people daily. And so in order to do that, what I do is I'll make a video that says, hey, this is what I was feeling. This is what I learned in my real world experience. And in my real world experience, I come to these places of beauty and I meet people who are on the same journey. And we're all on the same journey, whether we know it or not. We're either exercising right from the chair that we're in, or I'm exercising my freedom of speech. So you see, it takes one to know one. We have to look at ourselves when we understand what we're talking about. I mean, because, hey, who am I? I basically drive around endlessly because I enjoy being point man on driving duty, because I really don't know if you guys are like me. I don't trust a lot of people driving me around because not a lot of people are on the same level of ability. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. What I'm saying is sometimes we get into a vehicle with someone who's operating it maybe unintentionally reckless, a little bit more reckless than we might. Maybe because, for an example, they don't even pay attention to when someone is staying in their proximity for miles and miles and miles. You see, when someone is basically just kind of staying in your almost in your blind spot sometimes, that's a hazard. That's something that only the unconscious mind can do to try and get the attention of the conscious mind. For an example, if I'm sitting here and I see a beautiful person walk by, I might unconsciously start looking at that person while I'm still telling you this very subject. It's an unconscious thing that until we start to realize what we're consciously focusing in on, we don't really know how to share a story. So I'm sharing a story as raw and honest as I can. The same way that if I saw a beautiful car pass by, that I would take note and I would understand what its logic was. It's like, who built that? What is it for? That looks fast. That looks, and again, I just said a beautiful car and I'm describing a sports car. So if I saw my vehicle go by, I'd be like, man, that's the most amazing vehicle in the entire world, in the entire universe. This is my trusty steed. And I would be, basically, I'm just telling you, we're big kids. And if we're not 100% dedicated, if we're not 100% committed, then we have a little bit of room that's open to interpretation. What that means is, if something happened in my life that causes me trauma and stress, even if it's hearing this person talk right now in front of you, if this is causing trauma and stress, the next thing to do is just go, well, let me explore that feeling a little bit further. So we calm down, we breathe. And I think that's why a lot of us are listening to this video right now. We breathe, we breathe in that fresh, amazing air, and we don't need to sell a t-shirt about it. We basically do things that help to also help other people. And by helping other people, it would help me a lot to not have to pick up plastic things on these walks. It would help me immensely. It would help Mother Nature immensely if we did not have to pick up all the trash that's all over the trails. And all of this trash is manifested because we continue to purchase it based on the teachings that were brought to us by our fathers. And our fathers don't know any different, and they're extremely happy taking advantage of the same system that we are. We love these things that we're able to choose from. And in the face of adversity, we may want to also consider limiting these levels of consumption. So just as an example, today, again, it's a Monday. I have something to ship out, one of the last auction items. Thanks again, everyone, for helping me. Who helped me. Thank you to anyone who helped me to share the fact that I was auctioning off these items. I used to be known as a photographer, and I sold off my camera gear, almost all of it. The only things I haven't sold off are the action cameras, the GoPro type things. Those are on the agenda to be listed next. I have a feeling that I just haven't listed them because I don't have enough boxes to ship those out right now. And all in all, I know that some of you heard the videos when I was talking about these auctions and heard me asking, hey, I really need some help here. Monetarily, this world is a little bit challenging. And so I was able to live the exact same way as you are. And I'm also able to make an income doing whatever I do, and to commensurately adjust my earnings, so to speak. Today, it's just past noon. You guys think I'm rambling and I'm telling you a story. The ones who are listening, you're really listening and you're hearing what I'm saying about, you heard this message that I was auctioning things off, and you know, didn't choose to share that video for whatever reason. I'm asking for help, and I pray all the time. I'm constantly focused on, how do I make this happen so I can help other people? How do I make this happen so I can help others? There are a lot of people who want to amass money, you know, and monetary aspects, and they'll sell you a solution. They'll sell you their smile. My smile's free, and it's increasingly rare. So when I smile for you here, you understand that basically, I'm looking at this person, and the more that they smile, and you can hear these subconscious confirmations, the more that they smile, the more that I smile. I know who you are. You're a sinner, just like me. It doesn't matter what age we understand to learn new levels of responsibility. And so when we learn that there's a level of responsibility that says, hey, we need to include immediate, almost obligatory, mandated change that's simply put breaking free from the slavery that we once knew before. And I mean that in a very kind way, not a conceited way. What I mean is, when I walk on this trail, if I'm only finding, let's say for an example, the employers of my only friends whose products are littering that entire place, I heard it's not assault if you don't use a closed fist, officer. Any Daniel Tosh fans out there? Anyway, so all of this comic relief is necessary in this world. We know we're in a world that's challenging. That was the word that I used earlier. So we know that we're in a world that's challenging. We know that today must really feel like fall, just like Ray talked about it on the video, because he's sitting in his car with the windows basically just cracked, not breaking a sweat because it feels cool, crisp. And all of my friends would love to be walking on these trails, especially without those gimmicky holiday gifts like speakers. They have their place, I get it. And we probably don't all need to have an individual one. What if I could go to a mass warehouse out here with my memberships, just knowing that I was going to go on a trip, and I could go and pick the gear? And this was based on a monthly. There's so many ideas about loaning products that are just the auctions that I had going. For an example, I had so much camera gear. Now that I've sold it all, once they each reach their destination, I'll be able to remove those from an insurance policy. I was insuring these things, but I was doing that because this was something that I was doing with an intensity. And I was insuring those cameras because there were, in fact, instances, not very many, but where the camera insurance came in handy. And I only learned about camera insurance because I worked at an insurance company. And I worked at an insurance company because that was one of the most amazing places to work ever. My best friends that I've ever made worked at that company with me, and they probably still might. I still would. And at the same time, I believe in talking through a message of sustainability with a fervor, with an intensity that helps somebody, especially the counterpart who I talked about in another video, asking, where are you in this plight? If we know for a fact that this world is coming to some challenging times, where is that counterpart that can help me to resonate the message that I'm also interested in, just like you? You may not think you're interested in that because you have other concerns. And I'll tell you this, if you're out here walking on the trails today with me, you know, your friend Ray, if you were out here walking out on the trail with me today, your friend Ray, that's me, remember? Howdy from Texas. I'm glad you continue to watch. I know you're watching. I feel it because your happiness is changing and you're transforming, you're evolving. We're all waking up. We all wake up at different rates, and it can hurt. It can definitely cause pain to think about these subjects in a way where you add to the already existing concerns, which can seem insurmountable. Well, let me tell you, until your father burns the house down, you can't understand that there may be no ceiling on what would shock you until you yourself have been assaulted. And many of us have. And so that's why one segment will hear me one way and another segment will hear me a different way. You know, this is a universal thing. We might not have been assaulted physically. Some of us might have been assaulted mentally for years, decades, generations. So, what I propose in this era of challenge is that when I walk through these trails, if I had an app that said, and if any of you are app developers out there, help me make a US 385 app. I would love it. That would help us immensely. And by us, what I mean is we just need a message, you know? We just need a sign. We need a sign that things are off. And if you were at ease, just like I am, and walking through these trails on a nice fall day, what would you expect to see if you were thinking you were going to see any kind of wildlife? For me, I would see squirrels, birds of all sorts of varieties, insects. It's sunny enough that the reptiles would be basking. I'd see lizards, see all kinds of things. And I'd also be able to hear them because my Bluetooth speaker, it would have only been used when I was demoing that one album that I didn't even want to play live for some reason. You know, these things add up. And when we check a list just to check a list, when we go to a place that's offering a free breakfast, I haven't even had breakfast yet. I don't know what time. Might be 1 o'clock now. When you run on joy, your batteries never run out, baby. Some people remember that because they walked with me at all kinds of different points in life. And some people might think that I'm irresponsible for encouraging people to get outside or to eat differently than what their doctors would prescribe. It's not all different. It's just also inclusive of the concept of we don't have to do things at a set, regimented, continuous, seasonal, for eons way. We don't. You know it. I know it. I'm talking about it. You're... Where? Why do I ask for that person who's going to share this message with me? Do you think it'd be more compelling if you had two people talking this nonsense saying there's a lot of trash on the trails and some of it comes from a place that makes a lot of bucks out of the shining lights in the universe? How do we incorporate a solution to the mass of problems if we don't have a checklist that says, okay, yeah, this is right and that's right? We don't have to choose whether to make a lot of money and eat all the time, but things can certainly balance. And when you're getting more than you think you're getting, you need to really start looking nutritionally at things and go, well, really, how physically strong am I? How emotionally strong am I? If the simplest thing, like someone getting in a fight or someone, getting hit by their relative, how can that change the rest of their day? Unless something like that was something that I caused, I can only feel a certain type of sympathy for the other person. I don't need to feel the guilt from someone else that's burned down the house. but neither does the person who burned the house down if they apologized for it and moved forward to try and figure out, wow, I did this, and the world is already suffering from all of these different adversities. How do I build this? Maybe with reclaimed wood. How do I build this with, how do I rebuild this in a way that makes sense so that I can make amends? I think the biggest problem in society today is we can't forgive ourselves. And when we can't forgive ourselves, we cannot even begin to look at the things on the trails and call them out without some kind of hostility. We can't. And hostility a lot of times is misinterpreted when it's coming, when something is in fact actually concern. Concern can be misinterpreted for hostility. If someone is concerned for the well-being of another person or another entity, be it, let's say for an example, the land that they live on, the dwelling that they occupy, the very bed that they step out of, then as these responsibilities are not deferred, we can recognize the circle of life. That might even be the sun I was circling right there. Subconsciously and consciously, but really subconsciously at first. So when we think about how all of these things just kind of naturally manifest, every topic that we're talking about across the board are topics that are interesting to me as a member of the community whose presence is well known by my own respected peers. I mean, by people who are really watching this and understanding what I'm saying. As this is all happening, you're hearing me say, hey, I'm going for a walk. I feel the temperature change outside. I know what it's like. I've been doing this for eons, for seasons. Kind of exaggerated there. Maybe I didn't. Maybe we've been doing this for eons. That smart person would really agree with what I was saying if ever we could have a conversation about some of these things. So we have teachers and we have mentors and we have students and we have apprentices. We are all apprentices trying to earn our keep. What is it that we're keeping? What are we doing to bring it to life? What are we doing to bring one another to life? Especially when we're mad at one another. So forgiveness is one of those things where it doesn't have to go two ways, and the strength of each person who's locked in these mental battles can also be improved upon by choosing the right types of food, if any. When we take a fast food type thing that has all this packaging that could potentially end up in the places I'm about to go walk, when we do something like that, mindlessly, it's like mindlessly just letting the eyes go to what they go to. There's something behind that. There's a response, a dopamine fix when that Ferrari passes by. I don't know why I keep naming all this. Actually, when this Jeep passes by, this is this is by far my favorite vehicle ever. So the dopamine fix when the Trailhawk passes by. I mean, it's got the right shape, the attitude, the approach. You can see the capability there. Doesn't have to. Yeah, and each variety comes with its own flavor. What do we keep? And do we better it? Or do we not even regard it? Those are the things to me that are compelling, especially if you know that my objective would be to help out in these exact ways that I'm talking about. How do we rebuild the houses of our fathers so that they succeed in this economy, so that they succeed in this continuity of peace, the vision of peace? How do we do that? In the fairy tales, it's always driven by some kind of strange connection that bridges a conversation. In realities, it's about the same thing. There are influencers, true influencers, who don't need to influence in an advertised manner without creating more threads of possibility. Right now, the amount of possibilities are very constant. At all of the national parks that I've been to recently, the wildlife diversity has been on the decline. In all of the news clips that we see, it's flavored full of the catastrophic situations that are occurring in large portions of our oceans and land masses. Everything that we watch touches at our heart in a way that either causes anxiety or a general awareness. First, you have to be aware of something in order to be able to, I don't know if you could hear that, but basically, having less is more. And it's ironic that in order to tell this message, I am going to whatever extremes I can to help this channel gain some traction so that people can say, yeah, I get it. This is such a simple message. Our advertisement could change. We know that there's this overwhelming entity that's against that. And maybe we know that the entity can work together towards figuring out what it wants. Because haven't we run into situations, chosen ones, haven't we run into situations where we know that we can continue to talk to this thing all day long, but without another entity, without another bearer of peace with you in the same exact resonating frequency? Without that, it can be challenging for one to quote unquote battle the other one, especially when one is just presenting peace. Someone has to be the moderator, a neutral party who actually uses their voice. In today's world, I'm met by more and more people who will not use their voice for anything. There's no voice of reason. There's no voice of anything. There's just like an absence. There's a void. There's a darkness. And so for that reason, I think that when people begin to have trouble talking with one another, that's about well beyond the period of time that we need to have become concerned. We're already concerned. We know it. We just haven't been thinking about it and processing it in our own minds, saying, hey, all this other stuff is true. Got assaulted by my family member recently, and you just ain't got time for that. In some cases, I'll relate it to this. If you have a pet, if you were to go outside with your pet and take off running in a direction, they're probably going to run after you, with you. If you have two people who run outside and then run in different directions, you can see the pet have a split decision. They might even spin in a circle trying to figure out, who do I chase? What fun are we going to have, or whatever. So, our minds operate very much like what I just described a while ago, like a pet. We're going to go and chase the direction of fun by default. It's fun to follow all of those teams and the advertisements that bring us those coffee cup related pieces of litter and water bottle related pieces of litter for about, seems like 60 to 80% of the given rubbish on the trails. To not be able to address that fully is basically the blight that we are experiencing. To not be able to address that immediately. Did you hear that? To not be able to address it immediately is the challenge and when the challenge is accepted, it'll just resonate. And then another person will talk. Imagine all the people. When you use words like imagine all the people, what do you imagine for me to mean that as? Because some people who are specific in terms of their preferences to claim spirituality, some people who are specific, when you say imagine all the people, will think, oh, that's that person's song, that's devil music. And so immediately there's a hostility and there's a closed opportunity. There was a closed opportunity for learning. There was no opportunity for learning at that point. That's the type of hostility that causes the arguments that some of us might have. You know who we're thinking about. So, with all of that in mind, I know that you're watching. I know that you're hearing these messages. And I know that at a certain point you finally put down the tablet, you finally put down the mobile device, you finally put down that routine thing you were grabbing for. You finally put it down and you reheard a story that you already knew. Why you're rehearing it, why you're rehearing it without me telling it to you in person, well, it's because you wanted to understand some of what I was saying too. And maybe you still think that we're friends. I hope you think we're friends, because we are. I'll always be a friend. The first instinct that I have when I see a spider or a cockroach or a lightning bug in the house is to go and help it out of the house. It's my first instinct. Now, sometimes I can be surprised in ways where I might have a reaction, We can all be suddenly shocked into having a reaction where we recognize something instead of just going around business as usual, making the same choices over and over and over. I can tell you, after testing it one way versus the other, health is the only wealth that we ultimately will ever have. I don't know about you guys in society. I should be more inclusive. I don't know about you all in society. Plus, that's more Texan. I don't know about you all in society, but I know that my parents are prone to want to have digital watches that will count their steps. Those are certainly not going to be an heirloom to anything, not even the big dump area that these things are going to go to when inevitably the battery will no longer hold a charge. It's almost laughable to be able to have this society that we have where things are not handled in ways that are according to the actual real world. Do you know how many times I've been ghosted by people who say, I live in the real world. I have such a high stress thing to... What do you think it feels like if I'm out here in the real world walking these trails every day going, hey, the wildlife is not here anymore. Suddenly, this is happening right now. How do I get the attention of that other person? Do I have to take hold using the Vader grip? Mind control? How do I shake us out without assaulting one another? Well, the first step is you just take the blows. You keep getting hit yourself. While people in the back seat barely talk about it, even though they were there to witness it. People barely talk about it because your guess is as good as mine. My guess is that we have a level of conditioning going on. There are some people who are either able to hear what I'm saying or they're going to understand that I'm judging them, even though I'm telling you this is happening to me. In my experience with my own things that are happening in my life, I'm running into an increased frequency with which certain things happen. And it causes discomfort to talk about these situations. And so all I can do is say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause that anxiety in you. Peace. What I mean to do is question whether that choice is authentic or not. And by that, what I mean is when we go to buy a grande guzzler, does the fact that it no longer comes with a straw justify the amount of overall plastic that is still being produced in the system? Is it more efficient or less efficient? Those are the things that I'm curious about.
Oh, that's badass.
See how amazing these things can be? I've got my badge of honor buttons on the car, and he's pointing them out and talking about them. These are powerful topics of conversation. There are a lot of people who are enjoying seeing these things on this vehicle. If I saw this vehicle pass by, again, it's a showstopper. I've got the most amazing vehicle to bring you this message where I'm apologizing to you if I'm the one who's waking you up to this level of awareness. Our parents might have participated a little bit better in our upbringings. So I'm soothing you. I shouldn't say I'm apologizing to you. I'm happy to be able to bring this insight to you. I myself learn with my peers. If I'm not challenged in my learnings, I'm not learning anything more. So, and I assume that works for you as well. So we're coming to these locations together where we're understanding, either virtually across this universe or in person. We are here almost like rocks in a tumbler, where some rocks are a little more jagged than others and some are a little more smooth, but all of these repeated interactions result in a more stunning clarity and brilliance that's brought out of each of us. So I do enjoy very much the things that come from nature, and there is a huge reason why I was selling a lot of my camera gear. Some of that was basically to obtain more gear that was music related. So I wanted to get another guitar, and so I sold a lot of camera gear to get something that I actually want to use on a regular basis, because that's the only way I know how to talk, to connect with my audience here. This is a weird community where it seems like it's entertainment driven, so I have to learn to entertain. And honestly, I'm not the entertainer. So if there's someone out there who's an entertainer who can understand how to do that, I'm the tech person. I really enjoy doing the tech work, and I could spend all kinds of time doing that. I've been kind of struggling when it comes to trying to figure out how do you capitalize on bringing this message to a situation where we also broadcast enough is enough. We don't need to make another amazing amazing chest shirt that talks about prana. I don't even know how to, there's no way to put it down, except there's no putting down of any of these products that are coming out. What I mean is, how do we stop it? How do we make all the iPhones always get reconditioned instead of just landfill items? How do we do it? First thing we need to do is not obey our thirst for consumption, our appetite for consumption. Maybe that's what the title, it'll be like a Guns N' Roses cover, but it'll say appetite for consumption. It's really the same thing though. That was an amazing album, by the way. One of my favorite. I could listen to the whole thing and hear a story, because once you tuned in, the lyrics were something you heard, you paid attention to it, you know, no matter how it was being screamed out by the legendary Axl Rose, no matter how it was being just broadcast, almost accidentally, from what I hear, as far as how that album made a video, posted it on MTV, and then just basically changed the world. These things are always possible, always likely. We have to be joyful enough to understand, to want to do these things. And at the same time, I'm telling you, I'm clapping my hands. I mean, if you're happy and you know it, all the time, all I can do is just tell you, every person that I cross paths with, that I share the trails with, it's this, you see, even the duality of how it was worded there. All of the people who I've enjoyed time with are helping to bring us all to a different level of clarity. Some of us have to punish ourselves for long enough until we just finally realize the beauty that's already there, and emerging and capitalizing on that by basically being confident about what it is that we have, why we were having this to begin with, why we have these different ways of being able to possibly disappear, you know, whether it's into discomfort or disarray, or into walking the trails with whoever enjoys walking trails. You can disappear into your work. And if your work is joy, you're only going to be really surrounded by people who have that same kind of joy. You're only really going to be surrounded by people who are seeking that same level of gratefulness and gratitude and awareness. You also will find along the way that the people who have experienced the most jagged types of pain, if you're one of those people, you're going to meet those kind of people over and over. But the way that something is roughened up or not roughened up, in other words, if one rock is too soft and the other one's just always jagged and never gives, there's a one-way polishing going on. Oh man, I still love hearing the sarcasm in the words that I say, the spelling, the duality of it. So we've been talking for about 45 minutes. That's about as much as I want to put in for right now. I absolutely appreciate your time. I continue to thank you for having tried to help me raise the income that I was trying to raise, and it's helped. It really has helped. I think that in a certain amount of time, hopefully not in the too distant future here, you're going to see one additional guitar to rule them all in my arsenal. Thanks for enjoying the adventure. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.